Hi, my name is Yuji Uesugi. This is an introductory course on human security, protection, and empowerment of the vulnerable people. And welcome to this class. First, I would like to start with a question. Can you guess who are these three boys and where do they live? And what kind of security challenges do you think they face every day? The answer is they're from Tanzania, and one of the most serious causes of death among the children in Tanzania would not be a violent conflict, but rather it's a simple diseases like diarrhea. So if one of the most serious challenges for young people like them are diarrheas, do you think the heavy weaponries such as tanks and bombers and battleships and these military equipment and probably the large marines and navies and air force, do you think would be the sufficient measures to protect them from the most serious causes of their death? Obviously, it's not. So the concept of human security allows us to explore our horizons of thinking about how do we protect ourselves from the challenges that we face. And depending on where you are and who you are, I would say the challenges are different. So we need to tailor-make the responses to challenges of the security. So human security concept is a way for us to understand and explore more appropriate way to address the challenges of human security. By the way, because of these water systems, these kids were allowed to access to a cleaner water, and which prevents them getting ill and diseases, and that would help them to protect them from a challenging environment. So in essence, this course, I would like to focus on these different challenges of security, and I would like to discuss with you what will be an appropriate measures to address these challenges. These are the outlines that I would like to cover in this session and this overview sessions. So I would like to review various concepts and approach that has been developed in the international arenas. First, I would like to discuss with you what is human security and why human securities are called for. And I would like to also elaborate the way apply the concept of human security in the real settings. I would like to also touch upon the recent challenges that we are facing now in many parts of the world. First one, related to the concept and actions of humanitarian interventions. Second one is the concept or the norm of responsibility to protect. And third one is more practical challenges of protection of civilians in armed conflict. By the way, in some parts of the world, more people are dying by natural disasters, not of the violent conflict. For example, situation like in Bangladesh, that you can see in the picture, more people are dying every year from natural disasters, floodings and landslides and so on and so forth. So if we want to protect people from these challenges, we also have to take into consideration of how we protect ourselves or protect them from these natural environments. Today's session is an introductory session. So the purpose of today's session is to give you an overview of the concept of human security so that in the later sessions, we could elaborate on this concept. And in fact, one of the major objectives of this course is to come up with a proposal to address real challenges in the existing settings. And I would like all of you to act as a group and come up with a project proposal that would address the challenges of human security. In order for you to prepare for that kind of task, today's objective is to give you the review and overview of the human security approaches. So why human security is important concept in the area of peace and conflict studies, or in the area of conflict prevention, conflict resolutions, and peace building. At the end of this session, I hope that you will be able to start thinking about these questions. Before we go into the concept of human security, some people may already know some relevant concepts such as human development, human rights, and obviously the human security, the concept of human security, which is the focus of this session, is very much related to the already existing concept like human development and human rights. Those who are interested in development studies or working in developing countries to help their livelihood and welfare in the developing state or developing countries, usually you follow one of the principles of human development. So you engage them to increase the livelihood and the welfare of the people. You may be more interested in is to preserving the liberties and dignity of the people. And if you're interested in these things, then principal guideline will be the human rights. And I would like to argue that in the concept of human security, most important principle will be providing safety and the way to survive. So I would like to ask you a small quiz. And there are three concepts on your left side of the screen, and on your right side of the screen there is a descriptions of some concept. Can you draw a line between the concept and the descriptions of the concept? Human development means advancing the richness of human life. And human rights is an inherent to all human beings. And of course, human security means protecting fundamental freedoms of human beings. So there are slightly different definitions of very interrelated concepts. I would like to give you a definition of human security provided by one of the interesting commission called Commission on Human Security. Actually, this commission was set up by a collaborative effort with the United Nations and the government of Japan. There are two chairs. One of the co-chairs was Sadako Ogata, who is Japanese and who used to be the head of JICA, Japan International Cooperation Agency, and also she has served as the head of UNHCR, the High Commissioner for the Refugees. She was accompanied by a Nobel scholar, Amartya Sen. He is an economist, and he has introduced the concept of justice in the study of economy. And these two are supported by other experts, and they have discussed and to promote the notion and the concept of human security in the international arena. This commission in 2003 produced a definition of the concept of human security. The human security is to protect the vital core of all human lives in ways that enhance human freedoms and human fulfillment. They underlines the vital core of all human lives. So what are those things that can be considered as vital core? They come up with three. First one is survival. So every one of us needs to survive. For example, in order to fulfill our human rights or in order to enjoy our human development. Survival is the fundamental to all of them. Second, in order to free from the want or in order to realize what we want, the livelihood it also serves as the fundamentals. We need a means to survive and grow. And finally, dignity. We shouldn't be treated like slaves. We need to be recognized as the equal human beings, and all of us need to receive a sufficient attention, and that's understood by the concept of dignity. This is what I call a Pokemon model that I developed. When you think about the concept of human security, I would like to argue that the fundamental part, which is the red part, is survival. So all activities linked to the survival of the people. But survival of the people is not enough. It's a fundamental, but it's not enough. And we need to accompany the concept of survival with the concept of livelihood and dignities. And these two are basically the two relevant concepts that I have already touched upon. So in fact, the human security means providing a measures to survive, but also providing a measures to grow, and also providing an environment that you will be recognized as a human being. Let me turn to a different argument. Before the concept of human security became popular, we have been operating under the notion of state security or the national security. In the security studies, when we discuss about security, it is in essence, we are talking about the security of the state or the security of the nation. Our table compares two notions, the state or the national security and human security. Obviously, in the state security, you're thinking about the state as the unit of analysis. And basically, you would like to protect your own state from the stress from the external military threat. And therefore, the ways to maintain your security is build up your military or engage in a wise diplomacy so that you can prevent the wars or prevent the invasion of external countries. On the other hand, when you focus on the concept of human securities, the actors who are involved in this endeavor not only the state, include not only the state, but also non-governmental organizations or international organizations such as United Nations. And we engage in the activity related to human security, not just to protect your own state, but also to protect the people, but particularly protect the most vulnerable people. Why do you think that the state or the national security is not enough to protect people? If you live in Japan and you assume that the government of Japan will provide enough protection for their own citizens. So if the government is functioning, then people's security will be provided and protected by the government. However, we have faced a number of situations where the government or the states are not capable of protecting their own citizens, or sometimes the government is the causes of the threat to the people. The government is not willing to protect their own people. Then the concept of state security or the national security is not enough to protect people. Furthermore, if you turn your eyes to a situation in the Middle East or in Africa, many people actually cross their borders, leave their hometowns, and they become refugees. If they cross their borders, then your government will not extend service of protecting themselves. Who is going to provide services? Who is going to provide protections to those people who actually escaped from the war, escaped from the persecutions, and went to across the border, national borders? So refugees could be one of the most vulnerable people because those people lost their guarantor of their security. So that highlights the importance of thinking about human security, not only the state and national security, because some people will be placed outside of the influence of national or state security. As I introduced in the first slides, some people are threatened not only by the external military, but because of diseases and health conditions and environmental situations like natural disasters. So we need to think about a variety of threats, not just an external military threat. Obviously, a lot of people are facing challenges of armed conflict and also human rights violations. And many people nowadays cross their national borders because at home they feel their economic security is not guaranteed. So they cross their borders in order to gain a better life. So economic insecurity could be a threat to some people. And we also discussed before, many people are dying or losing their home, losing their families due to natural disasters. Japan, we have been enjoying so-called peace since 1945, and we have not directly become victims of armed conflict. However, every year we have some people dying because of natural disasters. We just had problem of natural disaster, and the big one we experienced a couple of years ago in Tohoku area, like tsunami. These could be also a great threat to human beings. So if you have to think about a diversified or wide range of threat, then your measures to address this threat have to be also multiple. So we start thinking about the different tools and ways to protect people. Humanitarian intervention, which we will discuss later, is one. Humanitarian assistance is obviously a very common tool to extend services and provide life-saving materials like food, medicines, and clean waters to the people who are in need. And more long-term approaches of human development, providing sufficient livelihood so that they themselves can actually develop and protect their own community and their own families. Let's turn to the topic or the question of why human security. I have just explained that national security does not cover everything. Particularly, those people who are considered to be one of the most vulnerable groups are often outside the areas of protection of nation or the state. So we argue that while national security or the state security remained pivotal to the peace and stability. This is very obvious that we, in the United Nations, for example, we have Security Councils, and all members of the Security Council is a big state. And we have 193 member states in the United Nations, all of them are the state. So we still hold on to the notion that state is the primary provider of the peace and security for people. At the same time, we recognize that there is a growing need for expanded paradigm of security. As I have pointed out, that many people faces different kinds of security challenges, and if we want to provide security to all of them, we need to expand our understanding of what is the appropriate measures to provide security for all. And actually, this statement is from a Secretary General of the UN report on human security issued in 2010. And let me ask you a question. On the back of the slides, there's a vegetable or the flower-like figure you can see. Do you know what these things? They are the poppies, and then they are used. They become the sources of narcotic. And this photo is taken in Afghanistan. Armed conflict are still going on in Afghanistan, despite the fact that the international community helped establish the government. Some argues that these illegal narcotic business helping Taliban to fund their activities. So, if we want to create stability in Afghanistan, and if you analyze that one of the causes of instability is illegal armed groups, and the revenue, the sources of funding of their illegal activities actually coming from narcotic business, and narcotics are obviously illegal. And if you want to maintain stability and peace in Afghanistan, what to do with narcotic business? International community, particularly led by the United States and the United Kingdom, introduced the idea of narcotic eradications. So they come up with some measures to eradicate these illegal production of poppies. It's very easy to just burn this poppy field. But if you imagine that most of the people in Afghanistan engage in agricultural business, so their livelihood is agriculture. Obviously, poppy is more economic or more effective or efficient way for most of the farmers to earn incomes. Maybe you can grow other vegetables, but the unit of price compared to that of illegal narcotics is low. So if they want to gain more incomes, they turn to this illegal business. So after you burned the field, how would you help them to sustain their livelihood? So maybe you can introduce other agricultural business which may have a good income, which may lead to a better income than growing narcotics. But in reality, it's very difficult to find the alternative one. And without providing alternative livelihood, if you just burn these illegal poppy fields, what do you think if they were not given alternative livelihood? How do they survive? How do they earn enough money to support their families? Most of them end up with joining Taliban, so it actually damages or work as a counter to your original goals of creating a stability in Afghanistan. So the concept of the human security allows us to come up with a better way to deal with it. So if you want to eradicate narcotic business, you have to come up with alternative measures of livelihood. I would like to now turn on current and emerging threat. Maybe you can just think about what kind of threat that human beings are facing at the moment. A few years ago, we had a group like Boko Haram who kidnapped the girls and tries to deny, according to them, the Western style educations. So these so-called extremist groups are considered to be one of the threat, an emerging threat. Violent extremism has been recognized as one of the emerging threat. And most of the time, people escape from these extremist groups, so they are no longer able to live in their own hometown. So they go to somewhere safer. So they are cut off from their communities, which often means they lose their jobs and they lose their property. We also have other challenges, and one of the challenges is the natural disaster. Every year, people are dying due to natural disasters. Can you think of other major challenges or the emerging threat that the human beings are facing now? If you turn your eyes to Asia, we have so-called Rohingya crisis. In Myanmar, there's a group of people, from the point of view of government of the Myanmar, they are Bengalis. They came from neighboring country, Bangladesh. So they are not the people or the citizens of Myanmar. While people call themselves Rohingyas, who are living in northwestern coast of Myanmar, claimed that they are legitimate citizens of Myanmar, and there's no way that they will be treated as foreigners. So there's a crisis going on there. Many Rohingyas have to seek refuge in their neighbor Bangladesh, and there's camps there, and people have to live in the foreign countries from the point of view of the Rohingyas and what international community can do. This is a very interesting and important cases. The state of Myanmar denies that they are legitimate citizens and they are not willing to protect those people. And actually, the armed forces of the Myanmar are becoming one of the major threat to lives of those Rohingyas. So under such a circumstance, when we cannot rely on the government to provide sufficient protections, who do we rely on, account on to provide protections to those people? We have a number of so-called humanitarian agencies. Some of them are international organizations, some of them are non-governmental organizations. For example, we have WFP, World Food Programs. They provide food to people staying in the refugee camps in Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh. We have other NGOs also providing assistance to Rohingyas. In order to protect those people, states are also providing assistance. The Japanese government obviously providing assistance, but other states also sometimes pressing the pressure on the government of Myanmar to change their policies. In the United Nations, they also tries to marshal some of the resources so that you can provide assistance to people in need. So in the human security, when we discuss about protecting vulnerable people, the state plays a part, international organization plays a part, and also non-governmental organization plays an important part. In the latest stage of this course, I would like you to come up with a specific project that enhance the human security of vulnerable people. In order to come up with the right measures and right project, you first have to understand the reality on the ground and what kind of needs they have, and then you will develop a particular project or measures to address these challenges. But to do that, the human security approach advocates two important things. One is obviously we have to provide protections, but the protection coming from outside or the top down is not sufficient. It could be important measures to protect most vulnerable people from the threat, from the direct threat or the indirect threat. But at the same time, in the longer run, those people need to be empowered so that they themselves can protect their own families and communities. The human security approach have to be accompanied with two important approaches. The one emphasizes on the protections of the people. The second one is emphasizing the empowerment of these people. By the way, in many parts of the society, as you can see in the photos, getting water is a challenging task. If you live in Japan, if you go to certain places, getting clean water is not a challenge. Maybe at home, you have the access to the clean water. Even at the university, you can have access to clean water. But in many parts of the world, it is even very difficult to get a simple water. And most of the time, the fetching the water is a task for a woman. Many of the girls are spending most of their time just fetching the water because it's so important that they get water, and these tasks are given to the girls, and girls are deprived of the chances of getting a proper education. So if some community have these challenges, you can come up with measures to address these issues of access to clean water. In fact, if you review a number of particular projects conducted by the government of Japan under the label of peace building, many of these projects actually focusing on providing clean water. The Japanese government believes that clean water is very important, fundamental to every human being. It's essential for our good health, and good health is very much important to have a livelihood and to enjoy a human life. And obviously, good health is also important in maintaining peace and enjoying the peace. So it may look very indirect, but tackling the challenges of providing clean water to every community is actually very important.